were some comments made by the governor that I wanted to get your reaction to, if that's okay. So I have them here if you want to watch.
Checks are coming out soon. Watch the mail. Okay? Okay? Don't spend it all one day. Get something you really need. Okay? Don't stop by the liquor store. Okay? Buy something for the kids. Buy them some food.
What do you make of that?
It's deeply offensive. I think it reveals a level of disconnect the governor clearly possesses as it pertains to the black community in particular. And this is a pattern. You know, this is something that revealed itself when she said that black kids in the Bronx don't know what the word computer is. There's just a level of, it's like the soft bigotry of low expectations. There's a certain level of low bar of what you expect from a community that is reflective of a value judgment on what our young people are capable of knowing, on how black communities spend their dollars. It reveals a bias that is very, very problematic.
Your campaign put out a statement calling her comments racist.
Correct.
Do you think the governor is racist?
No, and you can make racist comments because the nature of the comment is, like I said, it speaks to a devaluation of a community. It's rooted in an understanding of how a community is perceived and the narrative attached to that community. So, you know, people can say things that are racist insofar as those things are rooted in a perception about what a community typically does. If you say a community might use this money to go to a liquor store, right? That is a value judgment about that community. If you say kids in the Bronx don't know what the word computer is in the 21st century, that is a value judgment about that community. And there is a way in which it's a reflection of whether or not that community is equal, right? Is equal in its positioning in society.
Welcome back to Elected. I'm your host, Luke Radel. You just saw my exchange with Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado after his town hall here in Syracuse at the Dunbar Center. He's campaigning against his former running mate, Governor Kathy Hochul, in next year's Democratic primary statewide. Now, I asked him some questions after the event because I had not seen those comments from the governor on Sunday. I wanted to get his exclusive reaction, which you just saw there. We did have a longer, almost 20-minute sit-down interview prior to the event that I'm going to show you now in full. Take a look. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I want you to first tell everybody who you are and why you're running for governor.
I'm Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado. I'm running for governor because the status quo is broken and we need leadership that is bold, decisive, and transformational. And we don't have a governor that's providing that right now across New York. People are hurting, and we need folks who are prepared to actually do the heavy lifting of fighting for better housing, universal health care, higher wages. These are the things that, for too long, I think have been neglected.
Yeah. You told me about who you are. I'll tell you a little about who I am. I'm a senior at Syracuse University, so Citrus TV is our student-run news outlet up there. Obviously, Governor Hochul is an SU alum, doing a little homework. I know you're a Colgate alum. I think we're playing you guys on Friday in the Dome.
Colgate.
We'll see what happens on Friday night. We'll see what happens. I think it'll end up in our direction.
Gate.
I'm from Utica area originally, though, so I have some warm feelings towards Colgate. What was your college experience like?
I loved it. You know, I think it was a classic collegiate experience. You know, I grew up, I love, growing up in Schenectady, but it was a sheltered, I was in church a lot. I grew up working class, tough neighborhoods, but over time moved up to the middle class. But my life was really about church, and it was about books, and it was about basketball. So when I got to college, it was a real opportunity for me to do what a liberal arts education is meant to do, which is help you think about big issues, figure out who you are, what you're passionate about, wrestle with hard questions that maybe you weren't wrestling with when you were younger. So Colgate for me was really a good ground for that, you know, and I had wonderful professors who really became lifetime mentors of mine as a result. So nothing to say but good things about Colgate.
Did you have a particular class or professor that stuck out to you? Who would that be?
It's funny, you may be the first person that's ever asked me this. His name was Joseph Wagner. He was a freshman, my freshman seminar teacher. He taught what is real and what is true. I came in as a pre-med student. My dad was not a doctor, but he was determined to raise a doctor because no one told him when he was growing up in the inner city about being a doctor. He felt he had an obligation. Anyway, this professor introduced me to philosophy and political theory as a freshman and blew my mind. It made me realize that there was so much more to the world than I had understood. And he was the same professor 4 years later when he said to me on campus, my senior year, you should apply for the Rhodes. I had no plan to do that, but he proactively suggested it. And ultimately it changed my life. So we lost him, you know, some years ago to cancer before I even ran for Congress in 2018. So, you know, he's one of the people that I think about a lot right now. And I think about, you know, if he was alive today, what would he be thinking? Because he really did set me on a path where, you know, I found my purpose. I found my passion.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that you lost him to cancer. I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor myself. Yeah, I was treated here at Upstate in Syracuse. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was 17, my senior year of high school. I think there are a lot of young people who hear a campaign promise of universal health care. They've heard a lot of those promises before. How do you plan to get something like that done?
Well, first of all, I don't promise. And I think it's important. And I think promises are things that you should really mean. You fight for, and you say, this is what I'm working to deliver. And this is what I want to center the work around. We have a fight on our hands here. This is not going to be easy when you are trying to upend a system that is dictated by profiteering, and you have entrenched economic power and political power that is set about reinforcing it. I'm not here to act like that's an easy thing to overcome. What I am here to say is that that's why I am running, and that is the work I intend to do, and that is the power that I intend to leverage. That is how I intend to use the power people give to me, is to fight. And I'd say here in New York, you know, we have the wherewithal. You know, we have the resources, we have the wealth, the third largest economy in the country, the ninth in the world if we were an independent country, and let's say independent nation. And what are we doing with the resources, you know? So we have the opportunity to fight for universal health care, to fight for a higher minimum wage, to fight for affordable childcare. And it's not about doing anything except doing what's fair and just. Billionaires can pay more. Big corporations can pay more, their fair share. You know, that shouldn't be a hard thing. Not to mention we have all this money that we give away, billions every year under the umbrella of economic development. It never really produces development, at least development for the community. You know, people get priced out. We can take those same taxpayer dollars and invest them into the community in real ways and change people's lives for the better, but we don't, because we're playing a game of transactional politics. Yeah.
You mentioned using the power that you have in your current office as lieutenant governor. You've kind of been stripped of a lot of the power and authority that you've had since you split with the governor and announced you were running against her. Do you regret leaving Congress to serve in the Hochul administration?
No. Being able to serve the state that gave me so much. I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I'm born and raised in Schenectady. My parents are from New York. My wife's from New York. We got married in New York, had our family in New York. I went to college in New York. Everything about New York. And as a father, now twin boys are turned 12. They turned 12 in August. And a husband, you know, the opportunity to come back home and still be a public servant in the executive, in the state that I love, you know, and at that point, with the hopes of being a real thought partner with the governor, no, it felt like the right thing. And at the end of the day, you know, still being able to serve as lieutenant governor, still being able to be an independently elected official and bring accountability to government every single day, that there's tremendous value in that I don't ever have issues with. No, I'm incredibly grateful.
seems like in recent months, and maybe you disagree with this, but the governor has kind of pivoted her strategy. She's been a little bit more forceful in her messaging. I'm curious if you see that happening, if you appreciate that happening, if you think there are places where she could be doing more.
I mean, I could say that what she's done is say things that would suggest there's a willingness to fight, but she's not fighting, and there's a difference. There's a performative aspect to it that can look good in the digital ad, but at the end of the day, where's the action? For example, where's the special session? That would be a fight. You could do that now. You could call folks back to Albany, raise revenue. You can pass New York for All, protect the immigrant community that's consistently under siege right now by this dragnet. That's actual desire to want to fight. Just simply saying, you're a wannabe dictator. But then while you say that, turning around and negotiating with him for frack gas pipelines through New York, those two things don't go together. So your actions end up speaking a lot louder than your words. And that to me is what I have a problem with. Don't just say these things just because it sounds good to say. Say them because you believe them, and then do something that demonstrates you have the political will and the moral courage to do something about it.
Yeah. If she was hypothetically to do something like that, how would you evaluate your own campaign challenging her? Is there any scenario in which you choose to end your campaign before the primary election comes about next year?
No, there's no scenario, because at the end of the day, we're coming at this from two different places. I have a vision. I don't know what hers is, but I know what mine is. And my vision is to actually recenter government around people, not profit. My vision isn't centered around a quote unquote business friendly environment. Businesses need people. I'd rather put my focuses on the people first, and from there business can thrive. Those are some key distinctions. I'm not willing to sell New York out or sell our climate laws out to the president, as she seems to be, right? I'm willing to tax billionaires and big corporations to make sure that we actually have an economically sound and just system here in New York, and not be the state with the largest wealth inequality gap in the country, with 1 in 5 kids living in poverty. These are concrete things that I know are very different. So as you point out, maybe the rhetoric changes, maybe the tone changes as it pertains to the president, but the ideas that she brings to the table, the maintaining of the status quo, they don't change. They don't change. And the people as a result suffer.
Yeah. You mentioned people over profits. One of the big issues coming up on the table here in Syracuse is the coming down of I-81. Deputy Mayor Sharon Owens, who's the front runner right now to step in as mayor, she says the state should give that land under I-81 to the city of Syracuse in order to use it. Have you spoken to her at all about that issue or any issue? And would you support turning that land over to the city?
Actually, I have not spoken to the deputy mayor about that issue in particular. You know, my concern with any type of project of any nature is whether or not communities are being displaced as a result, and or are they benefiting from the maximizing of the value that comes out of that, right? So when we make these types of changes, when we move in this kind of direction, what is the intent behind it? And are the communities that are impacted the most the ones who receive the benefit from it? And if not, then there needs to be a accountability for that, right? That's how we should measure economic development. That's how we should measure the success of infrastructure projects, is what is the direct impact on the community? And is it going to lead to that community being priced out, being dislocated? Like, that is how we should be framing these issues.
Yes. Specifically on I-81, do you have a position on where that land should go? It will be in state control, and presumably if you're like the governor.
I want to think about exactly where that should go.
Sure. Let's talk about higher education. The price continues to increase. I know it does at SU. I don't know about Colgate, I would imagine. Tuitions are going up. What are some actions that you could take as governor to help make higher education more affordable?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think I think there's been some steps that have been taken in the past as it pertains to, state colleges, the SUNY system, and what we can do. I think it's a little bit different when you talk about the private, the private side. I think the lending mechanisms, how we tie interest rates to the extent to which we can regulate, how those rates are actually governed here in the state, I think is an important piece of that. I would also say, and I did this work when I was able to, as Lieutenant Governor, under the umbrella of the Office of Service and Civic Engagement. I was able to stand up an entire office with the idea of being able to create paid service opportunities for folks in college all across New York. And this is another way to offset the cost of college, not necessarily in the most significant way, but at least in a way that provides opportunity for students to build their resume and to get paid in a way that allows them to support their education and supplement whatever they're still getting in addition to age. So I think there's different ways to look at how to deal with higher ed, both in terms of the service component, both in terms of more low-income grant opportunities or scholarship opportunities, but also how we think about lending practices in particular, and the manner in which the interest rates are tied, and can we deal with them in a fashion that actually doesn't bankrupt students over time and saddle them with significant debt. Loan forgiveness is always something that we should be thinking about, and just thinking about also if we can tailor certain subjects that we think are important, for the state purposes, we can incentivize young people to go in that direction and not have their, experiences be cost prohibitive as a result.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Right now, it's early, but there are polls in this race that show you pretty far down compared to the governor. How do you win in June?
Well, it is early, and when I ran for Congress back in 2018, we ran in a district that first it was in a primary, 8-way primary that no one thought someone like with my profile could win. It was a 90% white district, the 8th most rural congressional seat in the country. Trump had won it by 7 points 2 years prior. And so at the time, a lot of folks didn't see a path. How are you going to connect with voters? You were a hip hop artist. You had a album cover with you wearing a hoodie. How do you connect with these farmers? And the way we connected was showing up every single day, engaging on the issues that people cared about, listening, and having a vision that people could connect with. The vision is very important. People need to know where you want to take them. They want to see where you want to take them. And the more we travel across this state and talk to folks about healthcare, talk about real affordable housing, not just a catchphrase, talk about raise the minimum wage, talking about dealing with economic inequality in a real way, talk about protecting our environment, breaking the cycles of poverty, but with real plans consistently. The people, I think, will rally around that energy, will rally around, and you got to organize. You organize around those issues, you organize around that energy. And keep in mind, that's all in contrast to a lack of vision. That's all in contrast to a lack of no direction. And so I think people just have to understand and be brought to the forefront of mind that there's a choice. And once people understand there's an actual choice between maintaining the status quo that we know is broken and actually fixing what we know is broken, the choice will become even more clear for folks. And we'll keep building in that regard.
Yeah. You talk about the status quo. There's a lot of frustration these days with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Do you believe that he should face a primary when he's up for re-election?
What I believe is that this is the time for new leadership across the board, however that comes. I think that we need the next generation to step up and be accounted for. So if there are folks out there that want to step up and be heard and be accounted for, then they should, just like I'm doing, right? I don't think anybody is owed their power. You have to earn your power. Power is not self-legitimating. So, we have primaries for reasons. We have an open, free democracy that we celebrate for a reason. And it's important that we allow all types of folks from all types of backgrounds, particularly younger generations, to come up and engage in a process that maybe can lead to different outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer on the general political question. On the specific question of Senator Schumer, do you think he should be primaried?
I don't know if he should be primaried. I think my focus right now is on New York and the state of New York, particularly. I know the governor should be primaried, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like, I know that.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot. I will say this. We are about to come up on another round in Washington of intense strategic thought around how to deal with the negotiations with the White House on funding. And I will say that I was very disappointed in the last go round in terms of the manner in which the Senate did not hold the line when the House did. And so we will see in these next few weeks another opportunity to engage. And I'm very, very hopeful that we hold the line and actually extract something and not just give up. That to me is very important.
Yeah, let's talk more specifically about that, because you served in Congress. You served in Congress during a shutdown. I think it was a record-setting shutdown. Do you think Democrats should let the government shut down if they don't get?
I think we should let it shut down and extract. Get something. Fight. This is
What specifically?
It could be any number of things, and that's for the caucus. That's for the party to wrestle with, not wait for. The shutdown. Not wait for the 24 hours before but huddle up. Leadership should be huddling up and think about whether it's a healthcare approach or the ACA or dealing with SNAP, any number of things, whether it's addressing immigration in a more humane way. Have a set of demands. And then leverage the power you do possess for the betterment of the people.
Yeah. Finally, before I let you go, this is maybe a fun one, hopefully. I don't mean to catch you off guard. Do you have a SU Colgate football score projection for Friday?
Colgate wins. That's what I got.
All right. We'll take that.
Go Gate.
Lieutenant Governor. We go back in a circle. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for being here in Syracuse. Appreciate you.